Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Kmart, and I want to talk about some basketball. And today, we are going to be taking a look at free agency in the NBA, but coming at it from a little bit of a different angle. Instead of talking about the teams that are making moves, the teams that are wheeling and dealing, signing and trading, and being very active in the free agency market, we're going to talk about the opposite. We've got about 6 or 7 teams here who have not been doing too much on the free agency side of things in recent times. So we're going to talk about those teams and maybe some of the reasons why they're not really making too many moves here. So we are going to get into it. I will admit this is the second attempt at recording this video. I did it once and I rambled on for way too long. So we're going to try and cut that down a little bit here, really just stick with the main talking points. So before we start, I do want to say one thing for the sake of talking about what the teams have done in terms of signings. We're talking about signing new players, extending current players, or trading, right? So we're not including team options or player options. We're not including two-way contracts, and we're not talking about signing draft picks as counting towards moves being made. So with that in mind, we're going to get into it. We're going to start with a couple of teams here in similar positions. The first is the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, in terms of what the 76ers have done so far, it's pretty much just the one move. They signed Patrick Beverley, and that's kind of it. The main reason I would think for the 76ers not being active on the free agent market is because they are prioritizing the James Harden trade, right? So Harden would like to be traded. The 76ers have hinted that there's still a possibility that they keep him, but I think most people in the league expect that trade to go through. So if you're the 76ers, that has to be your priority. You are not out here caring about free agent signings when you're trying to figure out how to get the maximum in return for trading James Harden, who is still one of the premier players in the league, right? So that trade is your highest priority. You don't want to go out and sign a free agent, especially since you don't know what you're getting back for Harden just yet, right? If you go sign a free agent, well, the trade package coming back could include a player who plays that exact same position, and then you've kind of doubled up and maybe wasted some money. And people's reaction to that might be, well, then make a trade that includes a player in a different position. But there's the chance that you lose value on the return package if you do that, right? If you go out and sign a guard and then the trade package includes a guard, then you would think, okay, we'll go make a trade that doesn't include that guard. Well, the guard that you would be getting back might be better than the guy in the other position that that team will send you. So you don't want to potentially lose any value for trading away James Harden because of a free agent signing that you made beforehand. So it makes sense for the 76ers to not really be pursuing anyone right now until they know exactly what is going on with the trade and what they're getting back for Harden. So that's the explanation for the 76ers. We take that logic, though, and we move it to the other side of the country. That's pretty much the same situation that the Portland Trailblazers are in right now, the second team on our list here. In terms of what they've done so far this offseason, they have re-signed Jerami Grant to a rather extensive contract, 5 years, $160 million. But that's really all they've done right now. But just like Philadelphia, they are prioritizing trading a star player. Damian Lillard has asked for a trade. Specifically, he has asked to be traded to the Heat, but obviously the Trailblazers are not forced to trade him to the Heat. He doesn't have a no-trade clause. But it's the same situation. They are prioritizing the Lillard trade. They don't want to sign any free agents until they know what they're getting back in return and how that fits into the lineup that they currently have, right? And it is worth noting both teams, the 76ers and the Blazers, the lineup around the guy that they're trading is kind of set, right? For the Sixers, you still have guys like Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid. Let's throw Tobias Harris in there as well, right? You've got guys to build around. For the Trailblazers, Yusuf Nurkic is still there. Jerami Grant is obviously going to be there. And now you've got those young guys, Anthony Simons, Shaden Sharp, the incoming Scoot Henderson, their recent draft pick. So that's another reason not to go out and sign free agents, because you have 80 to 90% of a team still to play around. You just took the star player out and are now trading them. So those teams don't have to be in a hurry to pick up free agents, and they definitely should not be when their focus should be on maximizing their return from those trades. So, part of the reason why those two teams are quiet. We move along now, though, to a team that has already made its trade. We're talking about the Boston Celtics here. Obviously, they made the big splash in free agency when they traded for Kristaps Porzingis. Technically speaking, that went down before free agency started, but we're kind of lumping it all together at this stage. But they traded for Porzingis. They signed Oshae Brissett to a veteran minimum contract, and that's really all we've seen from them so far. In terms of why the Celtics would be doing this, number one, and this is going to be a running theme for this video, is cap space. After taking on Porzingis' contract, or the final year of it with that $36 million, they don't really have any money left to work with. They're flirting with that luxury tax threshold, and they really can't afford to do too much more. That's why I mentioned Oshae Brissett. He signed a vet minimum contract, because those are really the only moves that the Celtics can still afford to make. So, cap space is an issue for the Celtics. The other reason why they might have started going quiet on the free agency front is they think that they're good, right? This is a team that made it to the conference finals with the roster as constructed. Now they add Kristaps Porzingis to it. I think they feel like they've done enough. Of course, you do end up losing Marcus Smart in this trade. That is a bit of a big deal here, right? He's very, very good at what he does, both offensively and defensively. But if you're the Celtics, I think you feel you can work around that. They've still got guys like Malcolm Brogdon and Peyton Pritchard if you need a pure point guard. But we also know this is a team that's comfortable putting the ball in the hands of Tatum and Brown in terms of running their offense anyway. So losing Marcus Smart is certainly a detriment to this team, but I think they feel there's no free agent out there that we could afford to go get, and the guys who are in our price range probably would not be enough to take Smart's place anyway, so let's just try and work with what we currently have to make up for his production. And honestly, it's not a bad sort of degree of logic for them to work with. Will it work? I'm not sure, but I'm not sure there's anyone out there right now that they could really afford to go get who would fix the problem anyway. So the Celtics are going to stand pat with what they've got post Porzingis trade, and we'll see how it works for them. But speaking of teams that have already sort of made some big trades over the summer, we move on to the next team, and that is the Atlanta Hawks. Unfortunately for Atlanta, the trade they made was not quite as well received as the Porzingis one for Boston. They traded away John Collins. They received Rudy Gay and a second-round pick in exchange. Other than that, no free agent signings. It's just been the trade and some sort of internal stuff. So, concerning for the Hawks, for sure. But if we look into why they may be doing this, again, the first culprit here is cap space. The Hawks were over the luxury tax threshold prior to the John Collins trade. So I think most people are sort of looking at that as a salary dump. They get rid of Collins' contract so that they can get under that threshold and avoid a massive tax bill. Part of the reason why they didn't take much back in exchange. A second-round pick and Rudy Gay was really kind of stretching the maximum limits of what you're allowed or not allowed, I guess, to take back in terms of salary. So, yeah, they don't really have any money in Atlanta to work with. They are under the luxury tax threshold. They would rather not make any moves to get them back into that territory. So, the other reason why the Hawks may be sort of okay with this is because they think that they're okay in most of their positions. They've still got guys to build around. Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, they've got Bogdan Bogdanovic. They added Saddiq Bey last season to work alongside DeAndre Hunter. You've still got guys like Clint Capella and Okongwu down low to work with. So the guard core is good. They feel like maybe the power forward center position is okay even with the loss of John Collins, and they've got a couple of guys to work with on the wing. So the Hawks think that they're okay depth-wise. They might be a little bit thin at power forward with Collins gone. They're going to have to either play some of their small forwards sort of down a position or have some of their centers play up. That's not always the most comfortable thing to do, but it is something that the Hawks may look into here if they don't sign anyone further. But that is a little bit of a concern for the Hawks. The biggest concern, though, for Atlanta is the fact that this team has to get better all by itself. This is basically the same lineup that they had last season, minus John Collins, and that team capped out at a first-round exit and a 6-game series against the Boston Celtics, where the Hawks were a 7 seed. So how much better can this team get just with what they currently have? Can they push up higher than that 7 seed? Can they avoid the play-in entirely? These are questions that I'm not really sure we know the answers to right now. I suppose there is a little bit of hope here for addition by subtraction. The Hawks trading away John Collins takes his sort of touches and his spot in the offense away. Maybe you redistribute that a little bit more to guys like Young, Murray, and Capella, and you get more efficient because there's one less guy who's factoring into the offense. I don't really know. That's kind of just a massive benefit of the doubt here for the Hawks that it plays out that way, but that's the concern. You're going to come back with a lineup that is remarkably similar to the last one, and that one didn't make it out of the first round. So if they get better, fine. This could work. If Young and Murray feel more confident, if the team develops better chemistry and just improves all on its own, then that will certainly work because there's no immediate reinforcements coming via free agency. And as of right now, it doesn't look like Atlanta are really looking at the trade market all that much. I don't want to say that definitively because anything could happen, but from what we have seen from them recently, I don't think they're going to be super involved on that front. So the Hawks have some concerns for sure, but they decide not to make too many moves. And meanwhile, we keep it in the Eastern Conference here, talking about the next team, the Detroit Pistons. A team in a very interesting position. All the teams we've talked about so far have at least been sort of kind of in contention, except for maybe the Trailblazers. But the Pistons are most certainly not, right? They're kind of bottom of the ladder here in the NBA. But we'll talk about what they're doing or not doing, I suppose, in terms of what they've added. Really no free agent signings here. They did trade for Monte Morris and Joe Harris, so they added a couple of guys there. And that's really all the Pistons have been doing, not just for this offseason, but for the season before as well. So in terms of why the Pistons may be quiet, it's because they already have a lot of assets and they're trying to figure out what to do with them, right? We mentioned this in the early offseason preview video for Detroit as well. They picked up a couple of project guys, some developing players last season, and now they need to find out which guys that they've picked up have value, which ones actually factor into the real next version of the Pistons lineup that's going to actually be trying to win games. Obviously, Cade Cunningham is there. He should be coming back. He is going to be a part of that team. But other than him, a lot of the rest of the roster is either very young, very much unproven, or a little bit of both, right? So the Pistons are probably more focused on figuring out what they've got on the roster right now as opposed to trying to add to it by bringing in free agents. So that's the thought process there. Last season, they were tanking, Cade was out, and you were just letting your young guys, your unproven players, just kind of run wild and see what you could get out of them. Kind of like what we talked about with the Houston Rockets as well. Let them go out there and see what develops. Well, that works when you're tanking, but now when you're trying to figure out which guys we should keep and which guys we should let go or try to flip, you need to look at it from a different perspective. You can't have, 13 to 15 guys that you're not sure of because, well, now you've got guys you are sure of coming back. So the Pistons don't want to add to that. There's no reason to lock up any more money for them either when they're not sure even what their full lineup's going to look like. So if you're Detroit, I think they definitely and certainly see improvement this season just because they lost so many games last season. But I don't think they're getting all the way into that sort of play-in conversation. So this is a season where let's not spend money, let's not bring in new guys, let's figure out what we have in the current roster and marginally improve from there. So that would be the thought process for Detroit. But now we can move things along, talking about the next team on the list, the New York Knicks, who are in a significantly better position than the Pistons, comparatively speaking. But For the Knicks, in terms of what they have done so far this offseason, they did sign Dante DiVincenzo to a new contract, and they traded Obi Toppin to the Pacers. Other than that, though, they haven't really done too much. But in terms of why the Knicks might be looking a little quiet on the free agent market, it once again comes down to cap space. The Knicks do not have a whole lot to work with before they hit that luxury tax threshold, so they don't really want to spend too much money. In fact, they needed to make moves just to make sure they could absorb DiVincenzo's new contract. They declined Derrick Rose's team option. They traded Obi Toppin away. So that made enough space for DiVincenzo's contract to not push them over the threshold, but now there's not too much more that they can do outside of making a trade. Now, that trade may happen. There are some rumors going around that the Knicks are sort of looking into maybe making further moves this offseason, but we're not 100% sure who they're really talking to. There is a chance that maybe they're in on one of the big names, maybe the James Harden or the Lillard situation, but nothing concrete at the moment other than the fact that they're still looking at making some sort of play. But if they don't make a trade, why else would they not be really looking at the free agency market other than a trade or money? That is because they might think that they're okay with what they've got, right? RJ Barrett's contract extension just kicked in for this season, so you've got yourself a trio of guys in Jalen Brunson, RJ Barrett, and Julius Randle, who are all making some pretty solid money, and those are the three guys you're maybe going to look at as your core. Maybe you add guys like DiVincenzo and Josh Hart in there for an expanded core, but those big three are the biggest contracts that they've got. So I think the fact that they're not making too many moves in the offseason reflects the confidence that they have in this trio moving forward. They have faith in what they've got. Brunson, Barrett, and Randle are all still relatively young as well, so they still have room to improve their games. And we take a look at what this roster did last season. They made it to the second round before the Heat kind of smacked them down a little bit. So another season of improvement, another season's worth of building chemistry, bringing in someone like DiVincenzo to run the point for them. And I think the Knicks feel that what they've got right now might just be enough to push them that little bit further forward. So because of that, they don't really feel like making too many other big moves, and they don't have the money to really do so anyway. I do want to say for the Knicks, there is a slight concern for them in terms of the forward position. We talked about sort of Josh Hart, Julius Randle. Those guys are obviously going to be starters for them, but their bench is a little bit thin right now, especially after they traded Obi Toppin away. So either some of their guards are going to have to play down a little bit, maybe spend some time at the wing. They're also potentially going to have some of their centers maybe play up a position to power forward if they don't sort of plug some of those holes, because power forward's a little bit thin. But we mentioned that for some of the other teams, right? For the Celtics with the guard position, for the Hawks with the forward position as well. You have the players, you just have to kind of shift around their positions a little bit. So if you're the Knicks, I don't think you're overly concerned right now. But that moves us to the final team on our list here. That is the Charlotte Hornets, a team that is in a very, very strange position right now. In terms of what they've done this offseason, they gave that big extension to LaMelo Ball. I think it was pretty much the max that they could give him. And they are reportedly going to sign Miles Bridges back after his year-long suspension from the league. So, those are not earth-shattering moves here. And the question you would ask is, why aren't the Hornets trying to do more? Because they're not a very good team. Shouldn't they be more active, trying to bring more talent in? And, well, the answer is no. The first reason why they might not be looking to move too much is the issue with their ownership. Now, Michael Jordan, as we sort of talked about earlier, he's selling his stake in the team. I believe still that it's going to an internal source. Another minority owner or an ownership group is going to buy his majority stake, and so those minority owners will then be the majority owners. So you're not bringing in a new group from outside of the franchise, but it is still a group who did not have control of the team and now having control of the team. And normally when we see that happen, whether it's internal or external, the incoming ownership wants the team to be as close to a blank slate as possible when they get there. right? So if you're the Hornets, you don't want to be committing any new money to free agents, right? You want to have as much flexibility as possible. You want to maybe let some players go, keep them on a short contract, or have them get as close as possible to being an expiring contract for this season. Now, I know I just said that. A lot of people might sort of say, hey, wait a minute. You say they don't want to commit money. They just gave that big extension to LaMelo Ball. What's up with that? And that is true. But LaMelo in this instance is the exception. LaMelo is a guy that I think the Hornets believe is the best and most marketable guy that they have on their team. He is their star player. He is the potential face of their franchise, or one of the faces moving forward over the next few years. And he was already on the roster. So in that instance, you do have to commit some money here, right? You can't just not pay anyone. There is a minimum amount of the salary cap that you do have to hit. So they feel confident locking down LaMelo long term. But beyond that point, I don't think the Hornets know what they want to do. And that's a big reason for this lack of free agency movement from them. It's not just the ownership thing, it's the front office doesn't really know what the plan is going forward here. They've got LaMelo. That's a no-brainer. You need somebody to sell tickets, but we look at the rest of the lineup, guys like Gordon Hayward, guys like Terry Rozier. Are they a part of the team's plan moving forward? Do they look to trade some of those players, or maybe just let their contracts expire in a year or two? Free agents on the team: Kelly Oubre Jr., PJ Washington. PJ Washington is actually a restricted free agent, but you know what I mean here. Guys who could be on their way out. Does the team look to re-sign them? Do you bring those guys back? If you were going to bring them back, wouldn't you have kind of done it already? Things like that. These are the kinds of questions that we're asking of the Hornets, and we're not sure what the answer is going to be. In the early offseason preview video, I did take my best guess at some of those situations, but we can't know for sure. And I'm not sure that even the front office knows 100% right now what direction they want to go in with all of those guys. So that's the other part of why they wouldn't be looking at free agents. They don't even know 100% what they want to do with the guys currently on the roster. Let's not bring in more players to complicate that process. And of course, that leads me into potential point number 3 here for the Hornets, why they may not be making free agent moves. And it could be because they're just planning to tank. This team has very little money on the books for the next season. They've got a young star guard who they can now potentially sit on because you just gave him that big extension. And they've got a very poor track record in terms of wins across the last few seasons. So there is a world here where the Hornets just pack it in. They say, hey, we threw a lot of money at LaMelo Ball. We're going to put LaMelo plus whoever the hell's on our roster for the next season or two, and we're going to suck, but we're going to wipe that slate clean. We're going to let guys go. We're going to not hold our free agents. We're going to let the contracts of guys like Rozier and Hayward play out and expire, and then we'll just reset from there. I find that unbelievably risky because that's assuming that LaMelo Ball just sits there and is okay with his team sucking for the first 1 to 3 years of his new contract. He may not be okay with that. And just because you've signed him to a long-term deal doesn't mean he's just going to sit there and be okay with that. We've seen that a lot in recent times. Players who are discontent demand trades, right? I mean, Lillard and Harden are being traded right now. There's the constant talk about whether Luka Doncic is happy in Dallas. Paul George demanded a trade away from Oklahoma City after playing just 1 year of a 5-year contract. That's the move that got him to Los Angeles to play with Kawhi Leonard. So as much as it sucks for the owners, the contracts are almost meaningless, right? If a player wants out, he is going to make a stink. He is going to get out. And LaMelo, if he looks around at what's sort of built around him in Charlotte and decides this team is terrible, he may not want to be there for multiple years. So the Hornets sort of taking that risk does feel a little bit iffy, but I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. But for now, the Hornets really have not done much of anything. And I don't think we can expect much more from Charlotte than what we really saw last season because of that sort of lack of moves. But that is it. That is all the teams that I wanted to talk about here. As you can see, a lot of different circumstances but they all lead to the same thing, to teams being a little bit quiet on that free agent market and not looking to commit a crazy amount of money or make any big moves right now. So for the 76ers and the Trailblazers, they're focusing on an upcoming trade. For the Celtics and the Hawks, they're content with already made trades. The Pistons and the Knicks feel like they are content with their current lineups for very different reasons. And the Hornets are just an absolute wild card. I'm not really sure what they're doing at this stage. But yeah, not really making too many moves, not making waves in the free agent market as of right now. But we'll see what else plays out, because we're not even a week into free agency. There could still be moves, there could still be trades, there could still be all sorts of stuff coming out here that these teams could get involved in. But for now, they are being very quiet. So that is all that I've got here. So let me know what you think about any of the teams that I talked about. In particular, the Trailblazers and the 76ers. What do you think that they get back in exchange for those trades? Because those still are kind of the dominant stories in the NBA right now. But yeah, let me know what you think. Are these teams okay where they're at? Should they still be trying to make moves? If they are, who are they looking at? Because the list of free agents has gotten a little bit thin here. But yeah, feel free to share your thoughts. But other than that, thank you all so much for watching, and I will talk to you later.